Hi. When it comes to job interviews, time is one of your most valuable assets. And in this video, I'm going to help you to spend as little time as possible to pass job interviews. Okay? The first thing I'd like to talk about here would be, do you stand a chance to pass your interview, or do you really want to invest all this effort and all your time into this adventure that you know it's a very consuming, it's also a mentally draining process as well, because if you're not, then it might be as simple as making peace with yourself and preparing for the next opportunity. It could be as simple as you're not qualified for the role, or maybe you're only 3 days before 5 on-site interview rounds and interviewing isn't your strength. So these are scenarios into which you should consider this alternative. Okay, why am I saying this? Well, the primary risk here is that you end up in a loop of becoming a so-so forever candidate. Okay. Second point I'd like to talk about here would be early on in pretty much any job interview, you'll get asked, are you currently interviewing with other companies? Okay, now the reason for this is quite obvious on the employer side, that they want to know how they might adjust their interview process. But the reason this question gets asked yields some very interesting insight for you as a candidate. And specifically, they ask this question to all candidates simply because they know the best candidates will prefer interviewing with multiple companies at once. Okay, now what's in for you from this? Well, you should understand that the best candidates understand that job interviews are serious investment. They're very taxing on their mental, on their time, even their budgets. So that's why they prefer to have a more structured and all at once process. This is one compared to candidates who consider interviews as a one-off thing, right? This isn't to say that candidates don't pass interviews, they consider it a one-off, but what happens in my experience is that they interview once, they figure out, hey, I didn't prep enough, they interview the second time, maybe they'll take it more serious, and maybe the third time it's going to work out. Okay, but the investment, if you invest 3 times into interview prep process, it's far more significant when compared if you invest only once. This is why the best candidates invest once and then interview in parallel with as many companies. Now, nowadays it's less possible to have these parallel interviews, especially in an employer-driven market, but the assumption is the same. If you want to save yourself time and improve your chances to pass the job interviews, you should prepare for real at once, your story bank and your role play, and then go into as many interviews as you can subsequently. Right, this is the best approach, and the same approach of taking things seriously works in the actual prep. A superficial candidate will prep their interview by answering as many questions as possible as a trivia game, so to speak. Right, the better candidates will have a slightly more structured approach, that is preparing a story bank or preparing stories on some 5 or 7 behaviors. And once that story bank is good enough, then they will maybe take a bit of role play and start answering as many questions as possible, having that story bank in a continuous improvement process. So you understand where I'm going here. Now, the third thing you should keep in mind here is your employment of time. Okay, are you spending time where it matters? And I know this might sound very general and vague, but if I give you 2 very simple examples. In phone screening rounds, spending time on interview prep does not work. Okay. Now, of course, if you're spending time to prepare your technical interview for a screening round, yes, that makes sense. But spending time preparing for a behavioral interview for the purpose of screening rounds, this does not work. So your time might be better spent on stuff such as networking or getting referred to that role, because I found that these transactional approaches in phone screening rounds work on referrals better than on actually preparing traditionally with a story bank for your job interviews. Okay, and the second example is in final interviews. Okay, do you need role play or do you need a story bank? Okay, you cannot say you need both at the same time, because you could argue that everyone needs both at the same time. We can always improve, but there's always going to be one of these that is far more important than the other one. Okay, and if you think these are simple notions, so to speak, you should keep in mind that 95% of candidates fail building a story bank that's good enough by their own standards. Okay, now I won't talk about coaching sessions because I believe that will make your stomach turn. The importance of your employment of time or spending time where it matters the most is also something that I observed will help you to save yourself quite a bit of time with these job interviews. Point number 4 here, mental strength. Okay, so mental strength is a problem in job interviews simply because sometimes these job interviews are designed to be stressful events because it's so to speak, during the most stressful times that you get to know people best. Okay, so people expect these, and it's usually, for most candidates, is a very stressful experience. And what happens is that our natural reaction to stress is to search for some other activities that are more comfortable to do, such as rewarding your CV, preparing your elevator pitch for 3 days straight, and these sort of things. So my point here is that you should understand, you should know yourself best. And if you feel like you're having a stress reaction and you don't feel like job interviewing, maybe your time is better spent, on sports activities or other, spending time with your family on some other more enjoyable activities than on the cosmetics or job interviews, which never yield any significant results. In my experience, it never works in job interviews if you have an HD camera or high quality sound. So long your internet connection works, that's all you need to speak. And 5, do you need more time? And you probably cannot ask for an extension, because the scenario would be the following. You feel like you can nail your interview, but feel like you don't have enough time. This scenario, you should consider getting help. Okay, help meaning interview training, interview coaching. Okay. However, what you should keep in mind, as with throughout what I said throughout this video, is that if you choose to get help in a bit to save yourself time, you should employ these properly, right? So if you choose to get a coaching session, try to make the best of that coaching session. Try to role play, try to get some results from that coaching session. If you get some interview training, try to get some quantifiable outcomes. Long story short, interviewing can be looked at as a initiative, as a business initiative, as an investment, if you want, for which you have to decide if it's worth or if it's not worth. If it's worth, then as with most investments, your judgment is super important in order to have the best possible outcomes. Okay, so I hope you found this useful, and thank you very much for watching.